Do you have another question?
I have another 2 questions.
Oh,
okay.
Another 2. I don't know. We'll
I'm
hear the next one anyway then.
First Minister, further open letter on race and racism. It was signed by 80 signatories, which included activists, community workers, academics and educators, drew attention to the difference between colour-based racism and racism faced by white migrant groups. And it called for discussions on race to, and I'll quote them here if I may, recognise that whilst discrimination and xenophobia faced by white migrant groups must be tackled, for most of these groups this will reduce over generations. The perception of whiteness will eventually confer an advantage, and at the very least the advantage of freedom from the impact of skin colour based on stereotypes, prejudice and hatred. The letter asks that those with influence, including politicians, seek to understand race and racism beyond legal definitions in the Equality Act, which, as you'll know, protects people from discrimination on grounds of colour, nationality and ethnic or national origins. The open letter calls for evidence-based policy approaches to take account of the history of racialisation and current experience of discrimination, which creates worse outcomes for people from specific ethnic backgrounds in specific areas of life. Can I ask what your response is to the signatories of this letter, and if you think it's fair criticism of the Scottish Government and indeed other institutions in Scotland? And just in case the Deputy Presiding Officer doesn't let me back in.
Excuse me. No, that's your question. And then I was just, if you'll bear with me, because we do have time, I was going to let you ask that,
Okay.
and I'm going to let other people in. I've got a supplementary from Bob, then we go on, Bob Doris, then we go on to open supplementaries, and you could come in then.
Okay.
So don't over-egg it.
Okay.
I'd be very happy to look personally at the letter that has the 80 signatories and take very seriously, if there hasn't been a response from the government yet, make sure that there is a detailed response to that. I think, so obviously I'd want to consider it before responding in detail to whether I thought criticisms, and because I don't know exactly what the criticisms are entirely fair. In general, though, I think it raises a really important issue that we do have to understand racism and discrimination in its historical context, but also in its current context, how different people and different groups experience discrimination. I've got a very strong interest in this from my own constituency experience. In my constituency in the south side of Glasgow, there is a very large, now well-established immigrant population from Pakistan and India, smaller African immigrant population, but also a more recent immigrant population from Eastern European countries. So there is already there obvious signs of the different experiences of discrimination, but also how in some cases that will erode over time, in others it will be less likely to. So I think we must both understand this in all of that multi-layered complexity, but also make sure that our responses to it reflect that. And I'm very keen to respond, to engage with the signatories of that letter to make sure that the action plans and the actions that we are taking forward are geared to reflect that complexity.
Thank you, First Minister.
Bob Doris, you have a supplementary on that.
Yes.
Asking what your message is to BME members of our community here in Scotland that feel that progress on equality and removing those systematic barriers that we spoke about is painstakingly slow. And would you agree that the criticisms that we discussed earlier should shame us all into action?
First Minister.
I think as long as we have a situation where any part of our broader community in Scotland faces discrimination, prejudice, racism or systematic barriers to fulfilling their potential, then we should all take that as a personal responsibility. As First Minister, I recognise my very special responsibility to show leadership there. So my message is that they should see me and the Scottish Government as an ally in this, and that our door is open to ensuring that we have the right dialogue and conversations to do the things that we need to do. I think representation is not the only part of this, but I think it is a big part of this. That takes us more into the political sphere. But, you know, I would say, it's the third time I think I've mentioned my constituency experience. I think there might be some challenge on this. I think I represent the most diverse constituency in the whole of the country. So I see many of these issues up close on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis. And I hope that gives me a deeper understanding, but it also makes me more determined that we address these issues, no matter how difficult they are, no matter how complex. We have to give meaning to what I think all of us want to see in Scotland, which is a country where people are valued for who they are, regardless of where they come from or the colour of their skin.